So in this step, we're going to put together the perch. And so for that, we'll need the perch plate, which is this large solid colored piece. And this is the largest piece in the solid colored part, so it's pretty easy to find. You'll notice that at one end, or rather two ends, the slots are cut all the way from the edge of the plastic. They're cut out. At the other two edges, the slots are simply cut into the plastic. So when it comes to figuring out which way is which, the two edges that are have their slot completely cut out, those are the sides of the perch. If you look closely at the other two edges that each have three slots cut in them, you'll notice one of them has a center slot which is cut in farther from the edge of the plastic than its other two slots. That's the rear. And the only reason that's important is that although there are three slots at the rear edge, this three-tabbed rail doesn't fit there because its central tab is cut too wide, and also because this slot is cut farther away from the edge of the plastic. What that means is that the rail with the three tabs on it goes at the front edge here, just like that. And in the rear edge, we use this rail that only has a tab at the extreme left and right edges, and it drops right in like that, and it leaves this slot exposed. That slot is actually for a different purpose. It's part of the system that lets the perch pivot on top of the machine. And then the remaining two rails only have one tab cut out in their center, and they just rest right here. The other thing I wanted to mention before we begin cementing is that sometimes when you have long and narrow acrylic pieces that have been laser cut, sometimes they warp a little bit due to heat stress. So this part might not be perfectly straight. And the reason I mention that is because when it comes time to put its tabs into these slots, you may actually have to bend that part back into its true shape. But if you do need to do that, it'll be a pretty subtle effect. It's just something to be aware of. If you're having a little bit of trouble slotting this, you may just have to distort it a little bit. Distorting is not really the right word because you're actually restoring it to its original shape after it having been distorted in the process. But maybe it won't even be an issue for you. So as far as construction goes here, I like to put the cement onto the rails, and to do that, I skip the tabs, and I just put cement into the low spots on the rail, and that way they'll come into contact with the perch plate here. It's a pretty simple process, so there's no reason to talk about it a whole bunch. We'll just go forward with it. I will mention that once we get all four of the rails on, we're going to go around and reinforce the entire perch with a nice bead of cement. So I like to start with the front edge, which is the three slots and the rail part with three tabs. And so as discussed, I'm going to put my cement on here on these low points in between the slots, or the tabs rather. It's okay to use a decent amount. It's okay if there's some squish on this part. We want strength, and we don't require a lot of precision from this part. So there we go. I have my cement on there. And I do have that distortion problem that we mentioned. So now that I have it in place, I just want to make sure it squishes down totally flat against the rest of the perch. And then repeat that process for the rear one. By applying my cement to the low parts of the rail in between the tabs and outside of them. Squish that one in place. that. Same again for the sides. Avoid the tab and just cement the low parts. And this one just kind of comes to rest here, and we let it take its position from the space that's left over after we install the front and rear. One more side. There. So now I just kind of go around and get these, look at the corners. See if you can't get those to press together. Make a nice little corner at all four. So you may have to push some parts one way or the other. But if you can make the corners match up, then everything else is really good. When it comes to putting this reinforcing bead of cement in, which I'm going to start now, the only real rule is I don't want to really get around this slot that we have remaining here, because that is for part of the pivot and we don't want to risk clogging it with cement. So I'm going to start to the side of it and then just go to the corner and avoid getting any cement behind it. And it's okay to use a fair amount for this here. We are wanting to reinforce this and make it stronger, so it's okay to have a decent amount of cement applied for that. I like to try to make sure that the nozzle of the applicator is touching both surfaces that I'm wanting to reinforce. That way the cement goes onto both parts. And just keep at it with going around this edge. This provides us some structural strength and also a little bit of additional protection against weather. When you get to this spot here, careful we don't put too much down. You don't want to squish any into that slot on the side. But these side slots here and here, you have a little bit more space than you do at the rear. The rear is the slot that's really at risk of getting flooded with cement, so I just stay away from that one. One more edge. Go. And the last thing I like to do when I reinforce is to make sure I get this short vertical space where two adjacent rails meet. So I like to tip it just a little bit so that I can just get some cement onto that, just like this. And that's that for the perch. We used at least I used a pretty thick bead of cement there, so this is a part that's going to need a little bit of drying time. So it will go aside with the other parts that are drying up.